The greatest writer in history hid a secret doctrine in his plays. William Shakespeare was far more than a brilliant storyteller. He was a secret initiate, weaving profound occult and esoteric truths into the very fabric of his work. By the end of this journey, you will see masterpieces like Hamlet, Macbeth, and The Tempest in a completely new and magical light. What if the storm in The Tempest was a coded alchemical recipe? Could the forest in A Midsummer Night's Dream be a map of the cosmos? We are about to dive deep into the hidden symbolism, the coded language, and the mystical themes that suggest the bard was one of history's most ingenious occult authors. What do you think is the real purpose of a good story? Elizabethan England was a world shimmering with unseen forces. While we picture grand palaces and explorers' ships, the air was thick with talk of magic. Queen Elizabeth's own court astrologer, John Dee, spent years attempting to communicate with angels through a polished obsidian mirror, seeking a universal language of creation. Alchemists in hidden laboratories worked to transform base metals into gold, a process they saw as mirroring the purification of the human soul. Astrology was not mere superstition, but a respected science, governing medicine, statecraft, and personal destiny. This was the cultural cauldron into which William Shakespeare was born. The theatre of his day was more than entertainment. It was a public forum, a place where the deepest anxieties and most forbidden ideas of the age could be explored under the guise of fiction. So the question becomes, was Shakespeare merely reflecting these popular occult interests, or was he intentionally using them? Many researchers point to clues suggesting he was an initiate of a hidden tradition. There is compelling, though circumstantial, evidence linking the imagery and philosophy in the first folio to the ideals of the Rosicrucian manifestos, which called for a universal reformation of mankind through secret wisdom. Some see the precise architectural symbolism in his plays as a sign of Masonic knowledge, though the formal organization of Freemasonry came later. This leads to the perennial authorship question, but from an esoteric angle. The debate over who really wrote the plays often focuses on noblemen or rival playwrights. However, one intriguing theory suggests Shakespeare was not a single person, but a pseudonym for a collective of philosophers, a secret society using the public stage to disseminate their doctrines. Whether it was one man or a group, the outcome is the same, a body of work saturated with symbolic depth. The theatre was the perfect disguise. On the surface, you have thrilling stories of kings, lovers, and fools. But for those with eyes to see, the same stage could present the alchemical great work, the steps of spiritual initiation, or the hidden laws of the cosmos, all while entertaining a crowd of groundlings who simply came for a good sword fight. This intentional layering is the master key. It means every element, from the storms and forests to the fools and kings, might carry a double meaning. With that stage now set, let's raise the curtain on the first of these hidden plays. Prospero's Island is not just a setting, it is a crucible. In his final play, The Tempest, Shakespeare constructs a perfect allegory for the alchemical great work, the centuries-old spiritual process of turning lead into gold, or chaos into enlightenment. Our guide is Prospero, the deposed duke turned island sorcerer. He is the alchemist, the magus who orchestrates the entire experiment. His magical robe and staff are the tools of his art. But an alchemist needs agents, and Shakespeare provides two perfect opposites. Ariel, the airy spirit bound to serve Prospero, represents the volatile, intellectual principle known as Mercurius. He is quick, changeable, and capable of soaring to the heavens or diving into the deep. In contrast, Caliban, the deformed son of a witch, is the base matter, the Negrido. He is the primal, chaotic earth that must be worked upon and transformed. The island itself, isolated and subject to Prospero's will, is the Athena, the sealed furnace where the transformation occurs. The play opens with its most famous scene, the tempest itself. This violent storm that shipwrecks Prospero's enemies is not mere revenge. Alchemically, it represents the first crucial stage, dissolution. The old order, the rigid identities and grudges they carry from Milan, must be shattered and dissolved in the chaotic waters, so that something new can be formed. Once the characters are scattered on the shore, the work begins. We see the stage of separation, where different qualities are isolated. The noble Ferdinand is separated from the others and tested. The drunken fools, Stefano and Trinculo, are led by Caliban in a base, comical plot that represents the unrefined impulses of the material world. All the while, Ariel, as the mercurial spirit, flits between them, reporting and manipulating, the connecting thread between matter and mind. The heart of the process is the conjunction, the sacred marriage of opposites. This is beautifully symbolized in the union of Ferdinand and Miranda. He is the son of Prospero's enemy. She is the alchemist's innocent daughter. Their love represents the harmonious merging of spirit and matter, a necessary step toward the philosopher's stone. Prospero's harsh tests of Ferdinand are the purifying fires of the alchemical furnace. Finally, we reach the culmination. In the famous mask scene, Prospero summons goddesses to bless the couple. A vision of the radiant, perfected state known as the rubedo, the reddening, where the gold is achieved. But Shakespeare, the true initiate, knows the work is not complete until the alchemist himself is transformed. Prospero's ultimate act is to break his staff and drown his book, renouncing the very magic that gave him control. This is the final release, the understanding that true mastery comes from surrendering the will to dominate. He forgives his enemies, not from weakness, but from the completeness of his own transformation. The base metal of vengeance has been transmuted into the gold of reconciliation. So the Tempest is far more than a fantasy about a wizard on an island. It is a detailed, dramatic map of inner alchemy, showing that the greatest magic is the transformation of the human soul. If the Tempest is a map of inner transformation, then A Midsummer Night's Dream is a blueprint of the universe itself. This beloved comedy of mismatched lovers and mischievous fairies operates on two distinct, yet perfectly interwoven, levels. On one, we have a hilarious romp through an enchanted forest. On another, Shakespeare constructs a dynamic, living model of the Kabbalistic tree of life, the ancient mystical diagram that maps the descent of divine energy into creation. The entire play is an elegant dance of cosmic forces, with each character representing a specific point on this sacred tree. At the very top, representing the highest Sephira of Kether, the crown, we find Duke Theseus and his bride Hippolyta. They are the embodiment of sovereign order and divine authority, the stable, ruling consciousness from which the drama unfolds. Their court in Athens represents the pure, undifferentiated source. The chaotic, magical forest where the lovers flee is the polar opposite. This is the realm of Malkuth, the kingdom, the material world in all its beautiful, confusing, and illusory glory. It is the dense, final manifestation where all the higher energies play out their dramas. Into this forest stumble the four young lovers, Hermia, Lysander, Helena, and Demetrius. They are not just confused teenagers. They are the living, breathing representations of the middle pillars of the tree, the spheres of emotion and intellect. Their shifting affections and raging passions mirror the dynamic interplay between Jibura, the sphere of severity and judgment, and Cheesed, the sphere of mercy and expansion. One moment they are in harsh conflict, the next in boundless, forgiving love. Their entire journey is a quest for Tifereth, the central sphere of beauty and harmony, which they finally achieve in balanced union by the play's end. Overseeing this cosmic ballet are the fairy king and queen, Oberon and Titunia. They are the divine masculine and feminine principles, the archetypal forces of Chokmah, wisdom, and Binah, understanding. Their famous quarrel, which causes the seasons to falter and the natural world to fall into discord, is a perfect illustration of what happens when these two fundamental forces are out of balance. Their reconciliation restores harmony to both the fairy realm and the human world, showing the interdependence of all levels of existence. And then there is Puck, the agent of chaos and change. He is the trickster energy, often associated with the sphere of Hod, which governs intellect, communication, and magic. Puck does not create the love potion, he merely applies it, often incorrectly. He is the mercurial messenger, the one who travels the paths between the spheres, creating the twists and turns that force growth and resolution. His famous line, "What fools these mortals be," is not just a joke, it is the observation of a cosmic force watching the souls in Malkuth's struggle with illusions they themselves have helped create. So this whimsical play is far more than a simple comedy. It is a profound esoteric lesson about the structure of reality. Shakespeare shows us that the chaos of human emotion, the conflict of rulers, the strife of nature, and the tricks of fate are all part of a vast, elegant, and intelligent system. The laughter in the dark forest is the sound of the cosmos realigning itself. But if the forest in A Midsummer Night's Dream is a cosmic map, the Forest of Arden, in As You Like It, is something far more revolutionary, a secret society. This pastoral comedy, filled with love poems and shepherds, is widely considered Shakespeare's most direct engagement with the ideals of the Rosicrucian manifestos, those mysterious texts that called for a spiritual and scientific reformation of the world. The play itself becomes a kind of manifesto in disguise. The corrupt court of Duke Frederick, where brother usurps brother and goodness is banished, represents the fallen, material world, the very society the Rosicrucians sought to transcend. Fleeing this corruption, the characters escape to the Forest of Arden. This is no ordinary woodland. It is the mythical sanctuary, the invisible college. In Rosicrucian lore, the invisible college was not a physical building, but a fellowship of enlightened minds, working secretly for humanity's betterment. Arden is its perfect symbolic counterpart, a place where the artificial hierarchies of the court dissolve. Here, a duke lives like a simple forester, a princess dresses as a shepherd boy, and genuine wisdom matters more than noble titles. It is a realm where nature itself seems to teach a higher law, a prototype of the utopian society the manifestos promised. Central to this vision is the transformative power of disguise. When Rosalind, the play's heroine, flees the court, she does not just put on boys' clothes. She becomes Ganymede. This is not merely a practical ruse. It is a profound act of alchemical self-transformation. By shedding her social identity as a duke's daughter, she steps out of her old, limited self. As Ganymede, she gains the freedom to speak truth, to test her lover Orlando's devotion, and to guide everyone around her toward their true destinies. This mirrors the core Rosicrucian and alchemical journey. The discovery of the divine spark within by stripping away the false layers of persona imposed by the world. Through disguise, Rosalind finds her most authentic and powerful self. Then we have Jax, the melancholic lord who follows Duke Senior into exile. He is often seen as merely a brooding cynic, but his role is far more specific. Jax is the philosophical observer, the perpetual seeker who critiques the follies of the world but struggles to fully engage in its redemption. His legendary speech, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players, is not just poetic melancholy. It is a precise esoteric statement. It describes the doctrine of personas, the idea that we wear many masks or roles throughout our lives from infant to elder, but that behind them all is a true, eternal self. He sees the play, but he has not yet learned how to rewrite the script from within. His presence highlights the different paths on the spiritual journey, the seeker versus the initiate. While Rosalind, as Ganymede, actively orchestrates healing and union, Jax mostly watches and comments, ending the play by withdrawing to a monastery, choosing solitary contemplation over communal harmony. The entire arc of the comedy moves from corruption to restoration, from falsehood to truth. The loves are sorted, the usurping duke has a convenient religious conversion, and the rightful order is restored. But the true victory is not about who rules the court. It is about what was discovered in the forest. The characters who entered Arden are not the same as those who leave. They have been tempered by the wisdom of the invisible college. They have learned to see beyond the stage of the world to the deeper reality behind it. In this light, As You Like It is less a simple romantic comedy and more a gentle, coded invitation. It paints a picture of a world made right not by force, but by inner transformation and enlightened fellowship. It suggests that the ideal society begins within the perfected self, a self found only when we dare to leave the corrupt court and walk into the mysterious, liberating woods. The sanctuary of Arden existed not just in a fictional forest, but in a very real wood knowe. The plays of Shakespeare were not merely performed in any space. The Globe Theatre itself was a meticulously designed temple of sacred geometry. Its very architecture was a three-dimensional map of the cosmos, a machine for ritual experience. When you stepped into the globe, you were not just taking a seat, you were entering a symbolic universe. The most obvious clue was its shape. The globe was famously circular, or more accurately, polygonal, representing the perfect form of the cosmos itself. This was no accident. The circle symbolized eternity, wholeness, and the celestial spheres. The audience, standing in the pit or seated in the galleries, surrounded the stage, becoming part of this living orb, participants in the ritual rather than passive observers. Above the stage, painted in brilliant blue and gold, hung a magnificent canopy known as the heavens. This was not simple decoration. It depicted the sun, the moon, and the constellations, a direct representation of the celestial realm. When a character like Juliet called out to the night or Prospero commanded the stars, they were speaking directly to this architectural feature. The heavens canopy physically embodied the divine, the realm of archetypes and fate that governed the lives of the characters below. Conversely, in the floor of the stage was a gaping trapdoor. This was hell, or more esoterically, the underworld, the subconscious, the realm of raw chaos and base matter. Ghosts like Hamlet's father would ascend from this darkness, and witches would vanish into it. This vertical axis, from the painted heavens down through the stage and into the hell below, was a stunning physical manifestation of the core Hermetic principle, as above, so below. The entire theatre was built to illustrate that the macrocosm of the universe was reflected in the microcosm of human drama. Even the audience's position was part of this sacred map. The groundlings, those who paid a penny to stand in the pit, were in the earthly realm. They were on the same level as the action, close to the mud and the energy, representing embodied, physical existence. Those who paid more to sit in the tiered galleries literally ascended. They looked down upon the stage from a higher vantage point, symbolically moving toward a state of higher consciousness and perspective. From the chaos of the pit to the ordered view from the galleries, a spectator's own journey through the theatre mirrored the soul's potential ascent. This means every performance at the Globe was far more than a story. It was a ritual enacted within a consecrated space. The comedy, tragedy, and history unfolding on that stage were playing out within a model of all creation. The architecture itself whispered the secrets that the plays shouted. So the next time you picture the roar of the crowd at a Shakespeare play, remember they were not just in a theatre. They were standing inside a working model of the universe, watching the eternal drama of spirit and matter, heaven and hell, unfold in a wooden O that held the entire world. The wooden O was a temple of space, but the true magic was woven into time itself, through number. Shakespeare's genius extended beyond the architecture of his theatre to the very architecture of his verse, embedding sacred numerology into the heartbeat of every line and scene. This was far more than a poet's fondness for rhythm. It was a deliberate encoding of cosmic principles. The most famous rhythm, iambic pentameter, is itself a numerical key. 5 beats per line, a pentameter, mirrors the 5 classical elements, earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, or the 5 senses through which we perceive the world. It creates a pulse that mimics the human heartbeat, drawing the listener into a trance-like state where the hidden meanings could resonate more deeply. Certain numbers repeat with such frequency they become a silent language. Take the number 7, the number of celestial perfection. It structures one of his most famous speeches, The 7 Ages of Man from As You Like It, mapping human life to the 7 classical planets. But it appears everywhere, in the 7-fold causes of melancholy discussed by characters, in the 7-year cycle of Prospero's exile. It is the number of completion, of cycles, subtly reminding the audience of a divine order behind the chaos of human events. Then there is 12, the number of cosmic order and governance. The very title 12th Night points to the festival of Epiphany, the 12th day of Christmas, a time of revelation and turned upside-down worlds, which is precisely what the play delivers. We find 12 jurors in The Merchant of Venice, 12 years of banishment in Romeo and Juliet. It is the number of the zodiac, of fullness, and of a system coming to its destined close. Perhaps the most spiritually charged is the number 40, a universal symbol of trial, purification, and transformation. In the Bible, it is 40 days in the wilderness, 40 years in the desert. In Shakespeare, we see it as the 40 minutes duration of the magical tempest, the period of trial that washes the characters clean. It is the duration of a profound ordeal necessary for rebirth. This numerical code reaches its most concentrated form in the sonnets, 154 poems, a number some scholars link to Pythagorean geometry or Kabbalistic gematria, where letters have numerical values. The structure of the sonnets themselves, 14 lines of iambic pentameter, is a mathematical vessel. 14 is twice 7, another nod to that perfect number. Some researchers have attempted to decode the sequence, suggesting the placement of certain sonnets, like the famous sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Creates harmonic ratios or points to specific philosophical concepts when the sonnet numbers are plotted or added. Whether one subscribes to a precise cipher or not, the intentional musical use of number is undeniable. The sonnets feel harmonious because, on some level, they are mathematically harmonious. This careful calculation extends to the play's very skeletons. The division into 5 acts was not arbitrary. It often follows the alchemical stages, from introduction and complication through to climax and resolution, a numerical framework for spiritual process. Even the repetition of motifs, like the 3 caskets in The Merchant of Venice or the 3 apparitions in Macbeth, uses number to drill an idea into the subconscious, creating a symbolic pattern the mind recognizes even if the intellect does not fully articulate it. So when you hear the rhythmic beauty of Shakespeare's words, you are not just hearing poetry. You are hearing a mathematically tuned instrument. The line counts, the act divisions, the recurring numbers, they were all tools. They were designed to produce specific harmonic effects, to align the listener's mind with the hidden order of the universe, making the esoteric truths within the stories not just understood, but felt in the very pulse of the language. Yet this numerical harmony often conceals a profound spiritual crisis, a theme Shakespeare explored with terrifying intimacy. The Grail quest, that ultimate medieval search for divine connection, finds one of its most complete dramatic expressions not in a tale of knights, but in the strange and beautiful journey of Pericles, Prince of Tyre. This late play, often classified as a romance, is a direct and deliberate allegory for the seeker's path, mapping the trials of chastity, despair, and miraculous rebirth onto the stormy Mediterranean Sea. Our hero, Pericles, is the knight-errant of the soul. His quest begins not for a cup, but for a wife, yet it immediately becomes a test of moral purity. Confronted with an incestuous king, he chooses to flee rather than compromise his integrity, a decision that plunges him into a life of exile and trial. This is the first lesson of the Grail path. The knight must be spotless, his motives uncorrupted by the world's darkness. His subsequent marriage to the good Princess Thaisa seems to promise an end to his suffering, but the quest is only beginning. A violent storm at sea, another of those alchemical tempests, claims Thaisa in childbirth. She is cast into the waves in a sealed casket, and Pericles, believing her dead, is shattered. He places his newborn daughter, Marina, into the care of friends and retreats from the world, cloaked in a depression so deep he ceases to speak. This is the wasteland of the Grail legend made personal, the desolation of a king whose soul has become barren. The true Grail in this story, however, is not an object, but a person. Marina, whose name means of the sea, is the living symbol of divine purity and redemptive grace. Lost to her father and raised in another land, she preserves her virtue against astonishing corruption. Sold into a brothel, she does not succumb, instead converting those who come to defile her with the power of her speech and her unwavering spirit. She is the incorruptible essence, the sacred vessel that cannot be profaned. When Pericles, a broken man adrift on his ship, is miraculously brought to her shore, their reunion is the Grail's revelation. Marina sings to the catatonic king, and her voice stirs his soul. He slowly recognizes her, and in that moment of recognition, a divine warmth returns to his limbs, and he hears the music of the spheres, a direct experience of celestial harmony. The lost is found, the broken is healed, the wasteland blooms. This is the Grail's healing power, restoring not just life, but connection to the divine. The play's very structure is its clue. Its episodic, fairy tale rhythm, moving from kingdom to storm to loss to miracle, directly mirrors the disjointed, dreamlike narratives of medieval Grail romances. The recurring motif of shipwreck is not mere adventure. It is the necessary dissolution of the old self before rebirth can occur. Each time Pericles is cast into the waves, he emerges stripped further of his worldly identity, closer to the naked soul that can finally receive grace. Through this popular tale of loss and reunion, Shakespeare was preserving a vital esoteric tradition. He translated the knight's sacred quest from the forests of Camelot to the universal human experiences of grief, hope, and the enduring love that can, against all odds, redeem a shattered world. The Grail was never in a castle, it suggests, but waiting in the heart of a lost child, or in the moment a father dares to hope again. The crown in Shakespeare's world glows with a dangerous, metaphysical light. It is far more than a piece of jewelry or a symbol of political power. It is the physical anchor for a sacred principle known as the divine right of kings, or droit divin. This was the belief that a monarch's authority came directly from God, making the king a living conduit between heaven and earth. The rightful ruler was not merely a governor, he was the embodiment of divine order within the nation. His personal virtue and spiritual alignment were thought to directly influence the health of the kingdom itself, the crops in the field, the weather in the sky, the very balance of nature. To wear the crown was to shoulder a cosmic responsibility. This is why the act of usurpation in these plays is not simple treason. It is a form of black magic, a violent severing of the sacred connection that holds reality together. Look at Macbeth. He is a brave and loyal thane, a man in his proper place within the great chain of being. But when he murders King Duncan, a guest under his own roof, he does not just commit regicide. He commits cosmic treason. He cuts the divine thread. Shakespeare shows us the consequences not just in political rebellion, but in the natural world itself. After Duncan's death, Ross reports that the king's horses broke from their stalls and, quote, turned wild in nature, as they would make war with mankind. Even more chilling, he says, 'tis said they ate each other. This is not poetic exaggeration, it is a precise esoteric diagnosis. The unnatural act of murdering gods anointed on earth causes nature itself to become unnatural. The stable, ordered kingdom descends into a mirror of Macbeth's own disordered soul. Richard III operates on the same terrifying principle. His path to the throne is a grotesque parade of murders, betrayals, and lies. He is a masterpiece of spiritual deformity, a man who proudly states, "I am determined to prove a villain." His physical hunchback is Shakespeare's brilliant symbol for a soul bent and twisted away from divine alignment. By seizing the crown through such profane means, Richard does not become a king. He becomes a cancerous growth upon the office. He sits on the throne, but he cannot channel its sacred power, because he is fundamentally disconnected from its source. The land suffers under a spiritual poison, and the plays suggest his eventual defeat is less a political victory and more a cosmic correction. The re-establishment of a legitimate line to restore the broken connection. The contrast is found in the characters who earn sovereignty through spiritual transformation. Consider King Lear. He begins the play as a king in name only, a vain and foolish old man who mistakes flattery for love and divides his kingdom based on a childish game. He has the crown, but he has lost touch with the divine principle it represents. His subsequent ordeal, cast out into the raging storm by his ungrateful daughters, is a brutal but necessary initiation. Stripped of every earthly comfort, every title, every shred of dignity, he is reduced to his bare, screaming humanity. In that storm, he finally sees the truth of his folly and the suffering of the poor he once ignored. His famous cry, "Take physic, pomp, expose thyself to feel what wretches feel," is the moment the spoiled monarch dies and the true king, the compassionate human being, is born. He does not regain his political crown, but he achieves a far greater sovereignty, the kingship of a wise and redeemed soul. Then there is Henry V. On the eve of the Battle of Agincourt, he walks disguised among his terrified soldiers, grappling with the immense weight of his crown. He prays not for victory, but for the strength to bear the sacred responsibility, for his men's hearts to be armed with conscience, and for pardon for his father's own act of usurpation. This night of profound spiritual crisis, of confronting the bloody cost of kingship, is what prepares him to become the charismatic, divinely favored leader of St. Crispin's day. His crown is legitimized not by birth alone, but by this ordeal of conscience and connection. So in Shakespeare's occult symbolism, The crown is a litmus test for the soul. A Macbeth or a Richard III puts it on and unleashes hell on earth. A Lear or a Henry V must lose their worldly sense of it, or nearly break under its weight, to become worthy of its true, celestial meaning. The throne is not a seat of power, but an altar, and only those who undergo the ordeal can ever hope to properly serve as its priest. The witches on the heath offer a prophecy, not a command. In Macbeth, the three weird sisters are not simple villains stirring a pot. They are something far more ancient and terrifying, direct literary descendants of the Norns from Norse myth and the Moirai from Greek legend, the primordial weavers of destiny itself. They do not create Macbeth's fate, they merely reveal the threads already on the loom. Their very name, Weird, comes from the Old English word, meaning fate or destiny. They are the incarnate voice of the future pressing into the present, and their power lies in their ambiguity. Their famous opening line, "Fair is foul, and foul is fair," is not just a creepy rhyme. It is a foundational occult statement, the declaration of the unity of opposites. In the mystical view, light cannot exist without shadow, creation without destruction. The witches exist in this liminal space where moral certainties dissolve, and they offer Macbeth a vision that is both glorious and damned. A perfect paradox he is utterly unequipped to understand. Their physical practice of magic is not Shakespearean invention. Their cauldron scene is one of the most authentic depictions of ritual magic in all of literature, lifted almost directly from the pages of Renaissance grimoires and books of folk magic. When they chant eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog, modern audiences hear nonsense, but an Elizabethan crowd would have heard something very different. These are real folk names for plants. Eye of newt was mustard seed, toe of frog was buttercup, wool of bat was moss, tongue of dog was houndstung, herb. Shakespeare was using the actual coded language of the occult herbals of his day, lending their ritual a terrifying authenticity. They are not throwing animal parts into a pot. They are conducting a precise, symbolic spell. The cauldron itself is the womb of transformation, and their chant, double, double toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble, is an invocation of elemental forces, a deliberate stirring of the unseen world to make their visions manifest. This is the crucial point. The witches represent the prophetic, unconscious forces of the world, the deep oracular current that flows beneath the surface of events. They are a mirror held up to Macbeth's own hidden ambitions. They do not tell him to murder Duncan, they simply say he will be king. The compulsion to act, to seize that future, comes entirely from within Macbeth and his wife. This is the tragic flaw in the occult sense. Macbeth possesses the ambition to reach for a hidden truth, but lacks the spiritual wisdom to interpret it correctly. He sees the prophecy as a fixed end point, a destination he must violently claim. He fails to grasp that destiny is a living tapestry, and by trying to control the weave with his bloody hands, he unravels the entire design, including his own soul. He believes he is mastering fate when in truth, he is becoming its most pathetic puppet. Their final apparitions, armed heads and bloody children, are the ultimate expression of this fatal misunderstanding. They show him seemingly reassuring visions, that no man of woman born shall harm Macbeth, and he will not be vanquished until Birnam Wood marches to Dunsinane Hill. Macbeth takes these as guarantees of his invincibility, but in the occult tradition, prophetic visions are almost always riddles. They speak in symbols that reflect the inner state of the questioner. A man not of woman born is a man delivered by caesarean section, like Macduff. A moving forest is an army using branches as camouflage. The witches speak the literal truth, but it is a truth designed to deceive a literal mind. Macbeth hears only what his desperate ego wants to hear, the promise of safety. He is blind to the warning within the riddle, the poetic justice that his own violent methods will circle back to destroy him in a form he cannot recognize. Thus, the weird sisters embody the most dangerous allure of the occult path, the temptation to peer into the machinery of fate without the humility or wisdom to accept what you see. They are the keepers of the threshold, and Macbeth stumbles across it with the arrogance of a thief. His tragedy is not that he met witches on a heath, but that he heard a cosmic truth and reduced it to a plot for a crown. In the end, their greatest spell was not in their cauldron, but in their silence. They showed him the threads, then sat back to watch as he, in his ignorant arrogance, wove his own noose. The witch's cauldron bubbled with a truth that Macbeth could not swallow, that words themselves are the oldest magic of all. In the world of Shakespeare's plays, language is never merely communication, it is incantation. His characters do not just talk, they cast spells, utter curses, and call upon powers that shake the very foundations of their reality. This stems from a profound Elizabethan understanding of the logos, the ancient concept that the spoken word is a creative, world-shaping force. For Shakespeare, the stage was a circle of power, and every line delivered within it was a ritual act. Consider Prospero, our island magus. His every command is a spell with tangible effect. When he summons Ariel, his words are not a request, they are a binding. He speaks of the tempest he raised, saying, "I have bedimmed the noontide sun, called forth the mutinous winds, and twixt the green sea and the azured vault set roaring war." This is not a description of past events. It is a recitation of his magical working, a verbal reenactment that reinforces his power. His famous abjuration of magic, where he breaks his staff and drowns his book, is equally potent. But first, he speaks his intention, saying, "I'll break my staff, bury it certain fathoms in the earth, and deeper than did ever plummet sound, I'll drown my book." The speech is the spell, the prelude to the physical act that seals his release from power. His language creates the magical framework, and the action fulfills it. Far more raw and terrifying is the curse of King Lear. Cast out into the storm by his daughter Goneril, the old king does not just get angry. He pronounces a formal, chilling malediction. He cries out, "Here, nature, here, dear goddess, here, suspend thy purpose, if thou didst intend to make this creature fruitful. Into her womb convey sterility, dry up in her the organs of increase." This is not a father's rant. It is a ritual invocation. He calls upon nature herself as a witness and an agent. He specifies the punishment, sterility, a direct attack on her future and her lineage. He shapes a desired reality with his words, investing his immense rage and royal authority into a verbal weapon meant to blight and wither. In the world of the play, we feel the weight of this curse, a toxic cloud that hangs over Goneril's subsequent actions. His words have altered the spiritual landscape. Even historical figures are framed through this lens of verbal magic. In Henry VI, Part 1, Joan of Arc is portrayed not as a saint, but as a cunning sorceress. Her power lies in her invocations. She calls upon familiar spirits, saying, "Expect St. Martin's summer, halcyon days," promising fair weather through occult means. Her speeches are presented as charms that rally the French troops and confound the English. Shakespeare depicts her success as stemming from this pact with unseen forces, her language serving as the conduit for their power. While historically inaccurate, this portrayal reveals how the Elizabethan mind classified charismatic, world-altering speech. It was a form of sorcery. Perhaps the most iconic invocation is the ghost's command in Hamlet. The spectre of Hamlet's father does not merely share information. he issues a sacred, binding charge. He says, "If thou didst ever thy dear father love, revenge his foul and most unnatural murder." The ghost frames the demand as a test of love, weaving a verbal trap from which Hamlet cannot escape. Later, the ghost's voice cries from beneath the stage, "Swear," compelling Hamlet and his friends to an oath. This word, "swear," is repeated like a hypnotic refrain, hammering the command into their very souls. The ghost uses language to implant a psychic imperative, a curse of purpose that corrodes Hamlet's mind and drives the entire tragedy forward. This belief in the logos, the creative word, was the air Shakespeare breathed. It was the idea that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Language did not describe reality, it participated in its creation. By placing such potent speeches within the ritual architecture of the Globe Theatre, Shakespeare was performing a double magic. He was showing characters using words to shape their fictional worlds, while he himself was using those same words to shape the emotions, thoughts, and perceptions of the audience standing in the Woodenow. Every curse, every spell, every invocation was a demonstration of the playwright's own supreme art. He was proving that the right words, spoken in the right order in the right space, could conjure laughter, summon tears, and make ghosts walk in broad daylight. The true sorcerer was never Prospero or Joan, but the man holding the quill, for he commanded spirits of a far more lasting kind, the spirits of human imagination and feeling, bound forever in the spells we call his plays. Amidst the curses of kings and the spells of witches walks a figure who wields a subtler, more penetrating magic. In the glittering courts and storm-racked heaths of these plays, the true sage often wears motley. From the nimble wit of Touchstone in Arden to the melancholy songs of Fest in Illyria, and most powerfully in the ragged companion who follows Lear into the Tempest, the fool is Shakespeare's masterstroke of esoteric character. This is no mere comic relief. The fool is the hidden adept, the embodiment of the alchemical Mercurius and the enlightened trickster, the one character licensed to dismantle illusion with a joke. He exists in the liminal space, outside the rigid ladder of nobility, bound by no law but truth. His license comes from his title, a freedom he uses not for chaos, but for a surgical kind of clarity. While kings issue commands and heroes make soliloquies, the fool speaks in riddles, songs, and seeming nonsense. This is his dialect, the language of higher wisdom that conventional logic cannot pass. He does not argue, he refracts. He holds up a distorted mirror to the powerful, and in the laughter or discomfort that follows, the real shape of their folly is revealed. Consider King Lear's own fool. As the monarch spirals into madness, stripped of his kingdom and his dignity, the fool alone stays by his side. He does not flatter, he pierces. In the midst of the howling storm, when Lear is finally confronting the raw truth of his life, the fool's barbs are not cruelty, they are guideposts. He sings a prophecy about the kingdom being brought to naught. He jokes about giving away his land. He constantly reminds Lear of the catastrophic mistake he has made. He is the voice of the king's own trampled conscience, made manifest as a capering, bitter clown. His famous riddle, "Have more than thou showest, speak less than thou knowest, lend less than thou owest," is not just good advice. It is a compact manual for spiritual and worldly survival, a code for navigating a fallen world. He is Mercurius in rags, the quick silver messenger connecting the shattered king to the bitter truths he must swallow to be reborn. This archetype finds a perfect parallel in the most iconic image of the occult tradition itself, the Fool of the Tarot. Card 0, the innocent poised at the edge of a cliff, a small dog at his heels, gazing upward with faith as he begins his journey into the unknown. He carries a small bundle, all his worldly knowledge, but his step is light. He is not ignorant, he is divinely protected, operating on intuition and trust rather than the rigid plans of the ego. Shakespeare's fools are this card brought to life. They are the ones unburdened by the heavy crowns and weighty plots that ensnare the other characters. They travel light in spirit, and because they have nothing to lose in the social order, they possess everything in terms of perspective. Their madness, as the world calls it, is simply a refusal to accept the insane logic of a corrupt court or a blind society. They see the game for what it is, and they choose to play by a different set of rules entirely. Touchstone in the Forest of Arden demonstrates this perfectly. He is a court fool who finds himself in a natural, utopian setting. His humor dissects both worlds. He mocks the artificiality of courtly love with his mock wooing of Audrey the Goatherd, yet he also finds a genuine, simple connection there. He operates as a living critique, showing that the so-called wisdom of the court is often more foolish than the simplicity of the forest. He guides not just the lovers, but the audience, towards seeing the relativity of all custom and hierarchy. Fest in Twelfth Night completes this trinity. He ends the play alone on the stage, singing of the wind and the rain. His song is a reminder that all the romantic confusions, the disguises, the social upheavals of the play are temporary. The enduring things are the elemental forces. He is the consciousness that observes the comedy, participates in it, but is never truly of it. He is the secret spiritual heart, the still point around which the whirligig of time spins. So when the fool disappears from Lear's story, famously with the line, "And I'll go to bed at noon," it is a seismic shift. His work is done. He has guided the king to the brink of his transformation, to the point where Lear's own raw, unfiltered perception has become a form of folly wisdom itself. The fool can then vanish, his function absorbed. He is the catalyst who is not present in the final compound. In a universe built on hidden symbols and layered meanings, Shakespeare saved his most potent emblem for the character everyone else on stage dismisses. The fool in his cap and bells is the ultimate initiate. He walks the high wire of truth, laughing all the way down. Elsinore Castle is not a home but a haunted sepulchre. From its very first scene, the air is thick with a spiritual poison, a rot that goes beyond political murder. Hamlet's story is not merely a tragedy of revenge. It is a meticulous record of a nikir, the ancient Greek term for a deliberate descent into the underworld. This was the core ritual of traditions like the Eleusinian Mysteries, where initiates underwent a symbolic death to gain secret wisdom and be reborn. Hamlet is our unwilling initiate, and his father's ghost is the classic psychopomp, the guide who calls the living down into the realm of shadows. The ghost does not simply deliver a message. It issues a sacred charge that fractures Hamlet's reality, pulling him from the world of ordinary thought into a subterranean landscape of doubt, decay, and hidden truth. Elsinore itself becomes his underworld. Its glittering court, with Claudius's false smile and Gertrude's hurried marriage, is a gilded tomb. The literal ghost walking its battlements is just the most visible symptom of a deeper sickness, a spiritual death that has infected the entire kingdom. Hamlet's famous declaration to put on an antic disposition is therefore far more than a clever ruse. In the context of the mystery rites, this feigned madness is the traditional madness of initiation. It is a protective cloak, a way of navigating the underworld where normal rules of speech and behavior are suspended. His wild talk, his cryptic insults to Polonius, his brutal treatment of Ophelia, these are not the actions of a merely depressed prince. They are the behaviors of a soul undergoing a brutal dismantling, whose old self is being torn apart to make room for a new understanding. He speaks a new language, the coded, paradoxical tongue of the underworld, which those still living in the daylight world cannot comprehend. The pivotal moment of revelation comes not with a sword, but with a play. The play within the play, the mousetrap, is the dramatic heart of Hamlet's Nicaea. In the Eleusinian Mysteries, initiates participated in a sacred reenactment called the Dromnon, a ritual performance that depicted the myth of Demeter and Persephone. By witnessing and participating in this drama, they directly experience the truths of life, death, and rebirth. Hamlet orchestrates his own Dromnon. He is not just testing Claudius's guilt. He is staging a ritual to force the hidden corruption of his underworld into the visible light of the stage. He holds as Twir the mirror up to nature. When Claudius rises in panic, the ritual succeeds. The truth is revealed not through argument, but through a visceral, performative shock. The king's reaction is the confession, and the court becomes the temple where the mystery is unveiled. Hamlet's agonizing delay, then, must be reframed. It is not mere indecision. It is the necessary gestation period of the initiate. He is processing the unbearable knowledge given to him in the underworld. To move from this revelation to simple murder would be to fail the initiation, to act from the old self that is dying. His progression is from the ignorance of a scholar prince, to the paralyzing knowledge of betrayal, to the grim acceptance of his role. When he finally acts, it is not with the hot passion of a revenger, but with the fatalistic resolve of one who has seen the machinery of death. His contemplation of Yorick's skull is the ultimate meditation of the initiate, holding the physical fact of decay while pondering the spiritual mystery it represents. This brings us to the undiscovered country, that bourne from which no traveler returns. For the Eleusinian initiates, the ultimate gift was freedom from the fear of death, a profound shift in consciousness. Hamlet's entire journey circles this mystery. His soliloquies are not just about suicide. They are the logical probing of a soul being forced to stare into the abyss. By the play's end, after his sea voyage and his brush with execution, he returns to Elsinore with a changed air. He speaks of a special providence in the fall of a sparrow, and that there is a divinity that shapes our end. This is not Christian piety alone. It is the hard-won equanimity of the initiated, the acceptance of a larger, inscrutable pattern. He has walked through his underworld, and though it costs him his life, he has been stripped of his fear. His final act is not one of rage, but of a terrible, completed clarity. In this light, Hamlet transcends its genre. It becomes a mystery play for a secular age, using the form of a revenge tragedy to chart the most ancient of spiritual paths. The ghost calls, the madness descends, the ritual is performed, and the soul is irrevocably altered. The rest, as Hamlet himself might say, is not silence, but the echo of a profound and eternal question. The spiritual underworld of Elsinore gives way to a different, equally potent realm of power. Across the tapestry of Shakespeare's plays, the most formidable occult forces are often channeled through his female characters. They are not mere supporting players in a masculine drama, but living embodiments of the divine feminine, manifesting as goddesses, witches, and queens who wield creation, destruction, and redemption as their sacred tools. This spectrum reveals a profound understanding of archetypal feminine energy, often serving as the hidden moral and spiritual compass in worlds led astray by flawed masculine authority. We begin with the most primal and terrifying manifestation, the triple goddess. In Macbeth, the three weird sisters are far more than plot devices. They are the ancient crone aspect of the maiden, mother, crone trinity, weaving destiny at their cauldron. They represent the raw, amoral power of nature and fate, a feminine force that exists before and beyond human morality. They do not care for kings or kingdoms. They operate by a deeper, older law. Their prophecy sets the universe of the play in motion, demonstrating that the feminine principle here is foundational, the very loom on which the tragedy is woven. From the supernatural crone, we descend to a figure of visceral, earthly vengeance. Tamora, queen of the Goths in Titus Andronicus, embodies the Dark Mother, the goddess of the earth turned avenger. After Titus sacrifices her son, she transforms from a captive queen into a personification of the Furies. She explicitly aligns herself with the goddess Diana, but not the chaste huntress. She invokes Diana in her aspect as the ruler of the woods and the underworld, seeking a revenge as brutal and natural as the forest itself. Her plot, horrific as it is, operates on a kind of terrible poetic justice, a feminine force of retribution that rises from the very soil stained by masculine violence and pride. In stark contrast, Shakespeare gives us the luminous, virginal aspect of the goddess, most purely seen in Imogen from Cymbeline. She is a direct echo of Diana, the moon-associated goddess of chastity, the hunt, and wild places. When falsely accused and forced to flee the court, she does not weaken. She becomes a huntress in the Welsh wilderness. Disguised as a boy, she navigates a cave, outwits a boorish lord, and maintains her essential purity not through passivity, but through active courage and unwavering integrity. Her power is one of magnetic virtue and lunar clarity, a light that persists even in the darkest political and personal forests. Finally, we reach the transcendent, almost saintly aspect of the feminine, the redemptive mother. Marina in Pericles and Hermione in The Winter's Tale are less goddesses and more like mortal vessels of divine grace. Marina, whose name means of the sea, preserves an incorruptible spirit in the brothel, her very speech a healing balm that resurrects her catatonic father. Hermione, wronged and seemingly dead, returns in the final act as a living statue, a miracle of restoration that heals her family and kingdom. They channel the energy of the archetypal mother not through biological childbirth alone, but through spiritual rebirth. They offer forgiveness, reconciliation, and the promise that what is lost can be found again. A power that the broken men in their plays are utterly incapable of generating on their own. What is so compelling is how these archetypes often serve as the only true moral centers in their respective stories. In a world where kings like Lear divide kingdoms on a whim, where generals like Titus commit atrocity for honor, where rulers like Macbeth and Claudius seize power through murder, these feminine forces provide the counterbalance. The witches pronounce the inevitable consequences of disrupting natural order. Tamora enforces a brutal cosmic law. Imogen's steadfast virtue exposes the corruption of the court. Marina and Hermione offer the only possible path out of the spiritual wasteland created by male folly and suspicion. They are the compass needles pointing true north in a storm of masculine error. Through them, Shakespeare encoded a timeless truth, that the journey from chaos to cosmos, from tragedy to comedy, very often requires the guiding, formidable, and multifaceted power of the divine feminine. The stars were not distant lights, but living intelligences shaping every human destiny. In the Elizabethan mind, the cosmos was a vast, breathing organism, and each planet was a god with a distinct personality, casting its influence down upon the earth. This wasn't a metaphor, it was the fundamental architecture of reality, and Shakespeare's characters move through this astrological landscape as if through a force field of invisible wills. Their passions, their failures, and their very natures are painted with planetary colors. Nowhere is this more tragically beautiful than in the fate of Romeo and Juliet. Their story is not just a tale of young love. It is a celestial collision between Venus and Mars. Juliet, with her luminous beauty and capacity for deep, devoted affection, is a child of Venus, the goddess of love. Romeo, however, is a classic son of Mars, the god of war. We meet him pining for another, but his energy is martial, impulsive, and hot-blooded. He leaps over orchard walls. He challenges Tybalt to a duel in a flash of rage. He acts first and thinks later. The entire play unfolds under this doomed conjunction. The love is pure Venus, but the context, the feuding families of Montague and Capulet, is pure Mars, strife and ancient conflict. Their union is astrologically impossible from the start, a fact the chorus names in the opening lines, calling them star-crossed lovers. The stars themselves have crossed their paths for tragedy, because the influences of Venus and Mars in their chart are in violent opposition. Their love is the brief, brilliant flash when two such powerful forces meet, destined to consume themselves. For a different kind of celestial magic, we look again to Prospero's island. The Tempest is orchestrated under a very specific planetary alignment. Prospero's art is fundamentally lunar and Jovian. The moon, associated with the goddess Diana, rules magic, illusion, dreams, and the changeable tide. This is the realm of Arol, the airy spirit who can change shape, create visions, and manipulate perception. The mask, the disappearing banquet, the very tempest itself, these are lunar tricks, the stuff of reflected light and shifting form. But Prospero is also the rightful duke. His overarching authority, his concern with justice, mercy, and rightful order, is the domain of Jupiter, the kingly planet. His ultimate goal is not just revenge, but the restoration of a harmonious kingdom, a Jovian concern for law and benevolent rule. His magic blends the lunar ability to enchant and confuse with the Jovian purpose to judge and restore. This belief in a cosmos where every entity had its proper place is spelled out with stunning clarity in Troilus and Cressida. The Greek commander Ulysses, trying to rally his fractious allies, delivers the great speech on degree. He describes a universe where everything is connected in a hierarchy, the great chain of being. Take but degree away, he warns, untune that string, and hark what discord follows. He paints a picture of planets going off course, the sun commanding the moon poisoning the sea, and winds wandering in endless conflict. This is not poetry, it is cosmology. Ulysses is stating that social and political chaos on Earth is a direct result of cosmic chaos above. When humans break their natural order, they untune the celestial music, and the planets themselves reflect that discord back in plague, famine, and strife. This is why characters so often feel governed by their stars. When Cassius in Julius Caesar says, "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves," he is expressing a radical, almost modern idea, arguing against the dominant worldview. Most of Shakespeare's people would disagree. They speak of being born under malignant stars, of having their lives written in the book of fate by celestial pens. This astrological layer is not set dressing. It is the operating system of the plays. It tells us that in this world, human emotion is a form of weather, and destiny is a language spoken by the moving heavens. To understand a character's suffering or joy, you must sometimes look not into their heart, but up at the sky they believed was watching them. While the stars map our fate, dreams chart the inner one. In Shakespeare's world, a sleeping character is not at rest. They are on a journey. These are not simple subconscious ramblings, but charged encounters with the symbolic language of the soul, messages from the divine, or terrifying visitations from the spirit realm. They act as sudden cracks in the surface of the play, through which we glimpse the deeper, often darker, currents of truth flowing beneath. Let's step through 3 of these portals and see what they reveal. First, the prophetic nightmare. In Richard III, the doomed Duke of Clarence recounts a vivid dream on the eve of his murder. He describes falling from a ship into the sea, then walking on the ocean floor among sunken treasures and the bones of dead men. A spectre appears, he says, and in his face strange shadows of wrath I saw. This is a classic dream of drowning, but in the Renaissance understanding, it was far more. It was an omen, a literal preview of his fate. Clarence interprets it himself, sensing his impending death. The dream's imagery is a perfect symbolic reversal. He who will be drowned in a barrel of Malmsey wine first drowns in a vision of the sea. It is a message his waking mind cannot ignore, a truth delivered from a realm beyond his control, confirming the audience's dread that his brother Richard's plots are already in motion. Next, the ignored warning. In Julius Caesar, on the fateful Ides of March, Caesar's wife Calpurnia wakes from a terrible dream. She cries out in her sleep, "Help, ho, they murder Caesar." Her dream is specific and symbolic. She saw Caesar's statue spouting blood like a fountain, while smiling Romans bathed their hands in it. This is not a vague premonition. It is a precise allegory of the assassination to come, depicting the public spectacle of his death and the conspirators' grim triumph. Calpurnia and the soothsayer represent the intuitive feminine voice that reads the symbolic language of dreams correctly. Caesar, the rational man of action, initially heeds her. But then the conspirators, led by Decius Brutus, arrive and perform a brilliant act of symbolic reinterpretation. They tell Caesar the dream is actually a good omen, that the spouting blood signifies Rome reviving from Caesar, that the people bathing in it seek tokens of honor. They translate the nightmare's clear warning into a flattering fiction, appealing to Caesar's pride and ambition. In doing so, they demonstrate the dangerous power of misreading the soul's symbols, a misreading that costs Caesar his life. Finally, the dream of reconciliation and revelation. In the late Romance Cymbeline, the exiled hero Posthumus Leonatus, believing his wife Imogen is dead, falls asleep in prison. He is visited by a spectacular vision. His dead family, including his father and mother, appear as ghosts, circling his body and pleading with Jupiter for justice. The god himself then descends with thunder, leaving a tablet of prophecy. This dream sequence is utterly different in tone. It is not a private nightmare, but a public ritual of the spirit. It operates on the Renaissance theory that in certain states, like deep sleep or near death, the soul could temporarily leave the body and commune with spiritual beings, or that such beings could visit it. Here, the dream is a divine courtroom, where ancestral spirits act as advocates. The tablet Jupiter leaves contains a cryptic riddle that foretells the play's happy resolution. This dream does not warn of doom, but orchestrates healing from beyond the veil. It is a mechanism of grace, a direct intervention from the divine to correct the tragic errors of the waking world and set a broken family and a broken kingdom back on the path to wholeness. In each case, the normal rules of the play are suspended. Time slows, logic dissolves, and imagery takes center stage. These moments force both character and audience to think in symbols, to feel truth rather than reason it. They remind us that for Shakespeare and his audience, the dream world was a real territory, a place where the soul could receive dispatches from angels, demons, ancestors, or God. To dismiss a dream was to dismiss a message inscribed on the very fabric of your being. So the next time a character in these plays closes their eyes, pay close attention. The plot may pause, but the real story is just beginning to speak in its oldest and most mysterious tongue. Leonce of Sicilia is a king who turns his own heart to stone. In the bitter winter of the play's first half, we witness not just a personal tragedy, but the precise and brutal onset of the alchemical nigredo. This is the blackening, the putrefaction, where the base matter of the self must be utterly dissolved in its own corrosive darkness. Leontes' sudden, unfounded jealousy is that darkness. With no evidence but the twisted logic of his own mind, he accuses his virtuous wife Hermione of adultery with his best friend, King Polixenes. His rage is a psychic poison that acts as the alchemist's fire. He destroys everything he holds dear. He publicly humiliates Hermione, casts out their newborn daughter Perdita to die in the wilderness, and causes the apparent death of his young son Mamilius from grief. When Hermione herself seems to die from the shock, his family is annihilated. This is the necessary, horrible dissolution. The stable kingdom, the happy marriage, the trusted friendship, all are reduced to black ash. Leontes is left alone in the ruins of a life he himself has burned down, staring at the shadow he has become. Only from this absolute zero can any new growth begin. Then Shakespeare performs his most daring theatrical alchemy. A single character steps forward and announces, "Now I will be your timekeeper." He tells us that 16 years pass. This is not a narrative convenience. It is the albedo, the whitening. In the laboratory, this is a long period of washing, purifying, and raising the dissolved matter to a state of pristine white. For Leontes, these 16 years are a perpetual state of penitent grief. He lives in a shrine he has built to Hermione's memory, weeping daily. His court is a monastery of remorse. This is the soul's purification through relentless, painful reflection. The black rage has been washed away, leaving only the stark, white sorrow of recognition. He is being prepared, cleansed of the toxic ego that caused the catastrophe. While he endures this whitening, the action shifts entirely. We are transported to the sun-drenched, shepherding world of Bohemia. This is the citronitas, the yellowing, often called the dawning of the solar light. Here, the lost Princess Perdita has grown up, a radiant flower maiden unaware of her royal blood. She embodies this golden, awakening stage. In her love for Prince Florizel, Polixenes' son, we see nature and nobility in perfect, blossoming harmony. The rustic sheep shearing festival is a celebration of fertility, growth, and natural order, everything Leontes violated. This pastoral interlude is not an escape from the story. It is the story's heart beginning to beat again. It represents the hope and vital energy that have secretly survived the long winter. The young lovers carry the promise of the future, the golden light that will eventually travel back to illuminate the sterile court of Sicilia. All threads converge in the final, miraculous act. The characters return to Sicilia, the scene of the original crime. Here, in a silent chapel, stands a statue of the long-dead Hermione. A sculptor, we are told, has captured her perfect likeness. Leontes, Perdita, and Polixenes gather before it, gripped by a sorrow that has now ripened into awe. Then the statue moves. Hermione, alive and preserved in hidden grace for 16 years, steps down from the pedestal. She embraces her daughter, and then, wordlessly, her husband. This is the rubedo, the glorious reddening, the creation of the philosopher's stone. In alchemical texts, the stone is the ultimate product, granting not literal immortality, but spiritual perfection and the power to heal and renew. What is Shakespeare's stone? It is this moment of impossible forgiveness. It is the resurrection of lost love, not from death, but from the frozen stasis of grief and guilt. The stone is the hardened heart of Leontes, finally softened and transmuted by decades of remorse, now capable of receiving a grace he does not deserve. The stone is the restored family, more precious than any jewel, forged in the fires of tragedy and annealed by time. The miracle is not that a statue walks, but that a heart sealed in winter can ever learn to beat again in spring. Through this profound allegory, Shakespeare reveals the ultimate goal of the esoteric arts. It was never about turning lead into physical gold. It was about this, the alchemy of the human spirit, where the base metal of our flaws is, through suffering, patience, and grace, transformed into the gold of forgiveness, and where lost time itself can be miraculously redeemed. This initiatory ordeal follows a sacred, ancient blueprint. It begins with a call that cannot be ignored, a summons that shatters the hero's ordinary world. For Hamlet, it is the ghost on the battlements, a voice from the grave charging him with an impossible duty. For Lear, it is the brutal betrayal by his own daughters, a storm of ingratitude that casts him out of his palace and his sanity. For Prospero, the call came years before the play begins, his brother's treachery that exiled him to a lonely island. This is the first rupture, the moment the soul is plucked from its comfortable sleep and set upon a path with no map. The call is always disruptive, often terrifying, and it marks the end of life as the character knew it. Having heard the call, the hero must cross a threshold into an unknown realm where the old rules no longer apply. Hamlet crosses by putting on his antic disposition, stepping into the role of the madman, a liminal space between truth and deception. Lear crosses literally, stumbling from the false order of his court into the raw, howling chaos of the heath. Prospero's threshold was the sea itself, the tempest that brought his enemies to his shore, transforming his island from a prison into a laboratory of fate. This crossing is a point of no return. The familiar world is left behind, and the hero enters a space designed for transformation, whether it's a storm-racked wilderness, a court of illusions, or an enchanted shore. Within this strange new world, the ordeal itself unfolds. This is the crucible, the sustained suffering that burns away the hero's former identity. Hamlet's ordeal is his paralyzing dance with action and thought, his contemplation of suicide in the famous to be or not to be soliloquy, a torture of the intellect. Lear's ordeal is the madness on the heath, where his mind unravels under the twin tempests of nature and his daughter's cruelty, stripping him to a bare, forked animal. Prospero, though in control, undergoes his own trial through the management of his base element, the servitude and rebellion of Caliban, representing his struggle with his own darker, earthly nature. Each hero is broken down, humbled, and dissolved in the fires of their unique suffering. From this dissolution comes the revelation, a moment of piercing clarity that could only be earned in the depths. Hamlet's revelation is one of stark, existential honesty. I am not what I am, an admission of his fractured self and the performative nature of his reality. Lear's comes in the tender, heartbreaking simplicity of "Pray you undo this button," spoken as he cradles the dead Cordelia. In that line, all his kingly pride is gone, replaced by a profound, childlike need for comfort and air, the ultimate human vulnerability. Prospero's revelation is the most cosmic, recognizing the illusory nature of life itself when he says, "We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep." He sees the world as a temporary vision, which allows him to release his magic and his wrath. The final stage is the return, though in Shakespeare it rarely means a happy homecoming. The hero returns from the ordeal bearing a boon of hard-won wisdom, even if that return is into death. Hamlet returns from his sea voyage with a serene fatalism, understanding there is a divinity that shapes our end. He carries the boon of acceptance into his final duel. Lear returns to consciousness and a fleeting moment of reconciliation with Cordelia, bearing the boon of unconditional love, though it arrives too late to save his earthly life. Prospero returns to his dukedom, but the true boon he brings is not his restored title, but his renunciation of power and his newfound capacity for forgiveness. He returns as a man, not a magus. In each case, the ordeal has done its work. The proud prince, the vain king, the vengeful sorcerer. These identities are gone, consumed in the ritual fire. What remains is a consciousness that has stared into the abyss and returned with a fragment of its secret, a wisdom paid for with everything they once believed themselves to be. The path of initiation forces a confrontation with our own shadow. Among the most disturbing patterns woven into Shakespeare's work is the recurring, visceral image of cannibalism. From the literal horror of a mother eating her children in a pie to the metaphorical consumption of a hero by the mob. These moments are not mere sensationalism. They are the ultimate symbolic enactment of the alchemical maxim, solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate. This represents the darkest, most necessary phase of transformation, where the old self must be utterly devoured so a new consciousness can be born. Let's begin with the most infamous example, the climax of Titus Andronicus. After the Goth Queen Tamora orchestrates the rape and mutilation of Titus's daughter, the broken Roman general seeks a revenge that operates on a cosmic level. He doesn't just kill Tamora's sons, he butchers them, bakes them into a pie, and serves them to their unsuspecting mother at a banquet. On the surface, this is a scene of almost unimaginable barbarity. But esoterically, it is a brutal ritual of transmutation. Titus takes the raw, violent energy of his enemies, their very flesh, and through the alchemical fire of the oven, transforms it into a new form, a deceptive pastry. He then forces the source of his corruption, Tamora, to consume that transformed matter. This is solve et coagula in its most literal and terrifying form. The old identities of the sons as warriors and avengers are dissolved, literally broken down. They are then recombined, coagulated, into a new substance that carries a hidden, poisonous truth. Tamora, in eating them, is forced to integrate the horrific consequences of her own actions, a dark nourishment that leads to her exposure and death. The consumption becomes a perverse sacrament, a communion that reveals the hidden connections between predator and prey, avenger and victim. It shows that in the cycles of vengeance, everyone eventually consumes and is consumed by their own hatred. Shakespeare takes this alchemical cooking into the supernatural realm with the witches in Macbeth. Their cauldron recipe is a grocery list of the taboo. Liver of blaspheming Jew, nose of Turk, and Tartar's lips are more than random bigotries of the time. These ingredients represent the outcast, the foreigner, the religious other, all the parts of society deemed unclean or threatening. By throwing them into the pot, the witches are performing a symbolic solve. They are dissolving the rigid boundaries and identities that define the social and moral world. In that bubbling chaos, all distinctions melt, fair is foul, and foul is fair. The potion they brew from this horrific stew is what grants visions. It is the substance that allows Macbeth to see his future. This tells us something profound. The play suggests that the power to see beyond the veil, to perceive fate, requires first acknowledging and metaphorically consuming the shadow, the rejected parts of the world, and by extension, the self. The visions come not from purity, but from a broth made of everything society has tried to cast out. Finally, we see this motif transmuted into the political and psychological in Coriolanus. The Roman hero Caius Marcius is a man of absolute, unbending pride. He is a pure martial spirit, but he despises the common people, the plebeians he is meant to serve. After his military triumphs, he needs their votes to become consul. The people, fickle and hungry, demand he show them his wounds, ask for their approval, in essence, to perform humility. He cannot do it, His integrity, his very self, cannot be digested by the mob. In a pivotal scene, the tribunes say the people must, quote, digest him. This is the language of consumption. Coriolanus fears being eaten alive by the populace, his unique identity dissolved into the common stomach of the state. When he is finally banished, he shouts, "You common cry of curs, I banish you." He refuses to be broken down, but his tragedy is that this refusal is his doom. He never undergoes the solve. He cannot allow his rigid, aristocratic self to be dissolved and recombined into something that includes the common good. So instead of a transformative consumption, he is merely destroyed, his purity intact, but his humanity lost. In each case, the act or threat of cannibalism points to the shadow side of rebirth. Spiritual alchemy isn't always a gentle whitening. Sometimes it is the horrific feast of Titus, where you must confront the monster and realize you have become it. Sometimes it is the witch's brew, where you must acknowledge the vile and reject it to gain true sight. And sometimes it is the failure of Coriolanus, where the self, too rigid to be digested, is instead spat out and broken. These shocking scenes remind us that before the gold can appear, the base metal must first pass through the fire, and sometimes through the gut. The rigid stone walls of Elsinore, or the gilded cage of Lear's court, are not the only stages for this human drama. Shakespeare repeatedly constructs a dual reality, a profound esoteric map built from two contrasting landscapes. On one side stands the world of the court, a place of strict hierarchy, political intrigue, and suffocating artifice. On the other lies the green world, an untamed realm of forests, islands, and pastoral countryside. This is not merely a change of scenery. It is a coded journey into the architecture of the self. The court, with its laws, its deceptions, and its obsession with appearances, represents the conscious ego and the fallen state of societal consciousness. It is where identities are fixed by title and role, where truth is often the first casualty of power. Think of Duke Frederick's corrupt court in As You Like It, a place of usurpation and betrayal, or the poisonous atmosphere of Claudius's Denmark, where smiles mask murder. This world is out of balance, a kingdom of the mind ruled by a false king. The only cure is an exile into the opposite. The green world is the realm of the soul, of raw nature and untamed potential. It is the unconscious mind made manifest, a place where the rigid rules of the court dissolve and magic becomes possible. When characters cross the threshold into this space, they step out of their social selves and into a crucible of transformation. The Forest of Arden is the clearest example. The moment Duke Senior and his followers enter those woods, they shed their courtly garments and their courtly anxieties. The forest provides, it teaches, it heals. In this green sanctuary, Rosalind can become Ganymede, not just to hide, but to discover her own agency and wisdom. The forest does not judge by title. It reveals by character. It is the invisible college where the soul's curriculum is taught by rusticity and starlight. The same pattern shapes A Midsummer Night's Dream. The problems of the lovers are created in the Athenian court, a world of paternal law and forced matches. Their confusion, their pain, their irrational desires are all suppressed there. But the moment they flee into the moonlit wood, those suppressed energies erupt. The forest becomes a psychic playground, where the fairy magic is really the logic of the unconscious illogical, symbolic, and transformative. Puck's love potion doesn't create new feelings. It brings hidden, true feelings to the surface. The lovers chase each other through the trees, acting out their deepest passions until, exhausted and purified, they wake to a new, harmonious understanding. The court could never have resolved their conflicts. Only the chaotic, green world of the soul could sort them out. Prospero's island in The Tempest is the ultimate green world, a domain entirely removed from the political machinations of Milan. It is a blank slate, an alchemical laboratory where the shipwrecked courtiers are stripped of their status and forced to confront their essential natures. Antonio and Sebastian plot murder in this wild space, revealing their inherent corruption. Ferdinand discovers his capacity for humble labor and true love. The island, through Prospero's art, acts as a mirror, reflecting back what each person carries within. The courtly ego, with all its pretensions, cannot survive here unchanged. It must be broken down by tempest, tested by strange tasks, and washed in the sea of the subconscious before any return is possible. This journey is the heart of the esoteric map. The green world is not an escape, it is a necessary descent. The character must leave the false order of the court, the domain of the unbalanced ego, and venture into the chaotic, fertile wilderness of the soul. There they undergo trials, face their shadows, lose their way, and ultimately find a deeper truth. They are, in effect, ritually dissolved in the green crucible. Only after this dissolution can they be remade. The return is the final, crucial step. The transformed individual brings the wisdom of the green world back to the court, not to destroy it, but to restore its balance. Harmony returns to Athens, a rightful duke is restored in Milan, and a new, merciful leadership emerges from the forest of Arden. The journey outward into the wild is, in truth, a journey inward. And the kingdom that is ultimately saved is not on any map, but within the once fractured human spirit. That cosmic map of green world and court has its own soundtrack, a silent symphony. Beyond the storms and whispers of the forest, Shakespeare's universe is held together by a profound and ancient idea, the music of the spheres. This was the belief that the planets and stars, in their perfect orbits, created a celestial harmony, a divine vibration that was the very fabric of cosmic order. Humans could not hear this music with their ears, but a soul in tune could feel its resonance, and a kingdom in harmony was one that echoed this perfect pitch. The most beautiful explanation comes on a moonlit balcony in Belmont. In The Merchant of Venice, Lorenzo comforts Jessica by pointing to the night sky. He tells her, "Look how the floor of heaven is thick inlaid with patines of bright gold. There's not the smallest orb which thou beholdst, but in his motion like an angel sings, still choiring to the young-eyed cherubins." He says the stars are a choir, and this sweet harmony is in immortal souls. But whilst this muddy vesture of decay doth grossly close it in, we cannot hear it. Here is the core mystical truth. The music is always playing, a constant choir of angels. Our human bodies, this muddy vesture, are too dense, too out of tune, to normally perceive it. We are born remembering the melody, but life's corruption makes us forget. The plays, then, become a chronicle of that forgetting, and the desperate struggle to remember. When human actions violate natural law, they don't just cause political trouble. They create a deafening cacophony in that silent symphony. Murder, betrayal, usurpation, these are the sounds that make the universe wince. Think of Ulysses' speech on degree in Troilus and Cressida, where he warns that if you take hierarchy away, the planets will stray from their courses. This is not a metaphor. It is a literal description of cosmic discord. When Macbeth murders Duncan, he doesn't just kill a king, he strikes a dissonant chord that rattles the foundations of reality. The horses eating each other, the falcon killed by the owl, these are not just odd omens. They are the audible symptoms of the celestial music screeching to a halt. The world is literally out of tune. This is why actual music and song in the plays carry such immense symbolic weight. They are not interludes, They are ritual acts of retuning. When Ariel sings Full Fathom 5 to Ferdinand in The Tempest, he is not just describing a magical transformation. The song itself, with its haunting, repetitive melody, is performing an alchemy on the listener. It is aligning Ferdinand's grief-stricken soul with a deeper, more enduring pattern of change and renewal. Ariel's music is a sonic spell, designed to wash away the discord of the shipwreck and prepare the prince for his sacred marriage. Similarly, the Fool's songs are never just jokes. Fest, at the end of Twelfth Night, is left alone to sing of the wind and the rain. His final ditty is a melancholic lullaby for the entire comedy. It acknowledges that while the romantic confusions are resolved, the elemental, cyclical nature of life, with its rain and hardship, continues. His song accepts this as part of the larger, if somber, harmony. It grounds the fantastical events of Illyria back into the enduring music of the earth itself, a necessary note of bittersweet reality in the comic scale. Even the lack of music speaks volumes. The heavy silence in the court of the melancholy Dane, or the stark, wordless agony of Leont's 16-year penance. These are periods where the music has stopped entirely. The characters are living in the painful silence between notes, waiting for a resolution that may never come. The miraculous statue seen in The Winter's Tale is perhaps the ultimate restoration of this harmony. There is no song, but the very movement of Hermione, the gasp of recognition, the tears of the onlookers, this is the chord resolving. It is the moment the long silent music of that broken family suddenly swells back into perfect, heartbreaking tune. So when you hear a song in these plays, listen closer. The lute, the ballad, the fairy's airy tune, they are more than entertainment. They are tiny, brave attempts by the characters, and by Shakespeare himself, to hum along with the choir of the stars, to repair a broken universe one perfect note at a time. The celestial harmony falls silent, and a king steps out into a screaming gale. King Lear's journey across the storm-ravaged heath is not a descent into simple insanity. It is one of literature's most harrowing and authentic portraits of a shamanic crisis. This is the ancient, brutal process where the old self must be systematically destroyed by unseen forces, so a new consciousness can be born. Lear does not lose his mind by accident. He is ritually dismantled, piece by agonizing piece. The process begins with the voluntary yet foolish surrender of his crown and kingdom. This is not just a political error. It is the first willing loosening of the ego's grip. He believes he can give away the power but keep the title, the respect, the identity of being king. The universe, in the form of his ruthless daughters, immediately calls his bluff. They strip him of his knights, his shelter, and finally, his very welcome. Each denial is a layer of his social self peeled away. By the time he stumbles out into the storm, he is no longer a monarch. He is a furious, bewildered old man, but the demolition is only beginning. The storm on the heath is the central ritual of this ordeal. It is not merely a backdrop of bad weather. The thunder, the lightning, the lashing rain, these are the palpable manifestations of the spirit world breaking through. In shamanic traditions worldwide, the initiate is often taken apart by elemental forces, by spirits of wind and lightning, who dissolve the ordinary personality. The storm does exactly this to Lear. It meets his raging ego with a greater, more primal rage. He commands the winds to blow and crack their cheeks. He dares the lightning to singe his white head. He is trying to fight the universe as a king would, with commands and threats. But the storm does not obey. It washes over him, and in doing so, it begins to wash him clean. The artificial rage of his wounded pride slowly merges with the raw, impersonal fury of nature. This is the purification. The rain soaks through his clothes, the last vestige of royal dignity, and reaches his skin. He is being reduced to his bare, biological humanity, a poor, bare, forked animal, as he himself later says. From this absolute dissolution comes the visionary state, the true madness that is actually a higher clarity. Stripped of everything, huddled in a hovel with the disguised Edgar and the fool, Lear's perception cracks open. He sees the world as it truly is, without the filter of wealth and power. His famous speech is the shamanic insight, the gift brought back from the brink of annihilation. He cries, "Poor naked wretches, wheresoe'er you are, that bide the pelting of this pitiless storm. How shall your houseless heads and unfed sides defend you from seasons such as these? Oh, I have taken too little care of this. This is not the rambling of a senile man. This is a bolt of moral lightning. For the first time, he sees the suffering of his subjects, the very people his kingship was meant to protect. His ego is gone, and in its place is a devastating, boundless empathy. He tries to tear off his own clothes in solidarity, to fully join the naked wretches. This is the ultimate shedding, the final willingness to become nothing, to fully inhabit the truth he has seen. His eventual death, cradling the body of his daughter Cordelia, is the tragic, heartbreaking completion of this brutal initiation. In many shamanic journeys, the initiate symbolically dies and is reborn with healing power for the community. Lear's rebirth is into a searing, mortal understanding. The fleeting moment of reconciliation with Cordelia was his chance for a new life, a healed kingdom. Its loss is the final, cruel lesson. When he enters with her in his arms, howling, he is not the mad king or the angry tyrant. He is a soul at the absolute extremity of experience. He looks for breath on a feather, he listens for a heartbeat. He is pure, focused attention on the mystery of life and death itself. His final, confused question, "Pray you, undo this button," is profoundly shamanic. It is a return to the simplest human need, a childlike request for comfort and air, from a being who has seen the cosmos and returned to the triviality of a tight collar. He dies not in the bliss of ignorance, but in the terrible, hard-won knowledge of love's cost and life's fragility. His initiation grants no happy ending, only the ultimate wisdom that to be human is to suffer, to love and to lose, and that true sight is paid for with everything you once believed you were. The crown he finally loses is the crown of his own illusion. The stage holds up a mirror, and in the reflection, another stage appears. This is the moment the spell doubles back on itself, when Shakespeare, the master illusionist, deliberately shatters his own illusion to reveal a deeper truth. These plays within plays are not just clever tricks. They are the very heart of his occult method, a direct application of the Hermetic principle that art is a reflection of divine creation. When a character watches a performance, they are doing exactly what we are doing, sitting in the dark, believing in a fiction. And in that mirrored moment, the boundary between reality and artifice dissolves, forcing everyone, on stage and off, to question which side of the glass they are truly on. The most famous of these devices is, of course, the mousetrap in Hamlet. Prince Hamlet, the man paralyzed by thought, becomes a director. He does not merely investigate his uncle's guilt, he stages it. He hires players to perform a pantomime of a king being poisoned in a garden, a scene eerily close to the ghost's account of his own murder. This is not evidence for a court of law. It is a ritual for a court of conscience. Hamlet is using art as a magical act, a sympathetic spell. By recreating the crime in symbolic form, he believes he can trap the king's secret and make it visible. And it works. Claudius's visceral reaction, his cry for light and his rushed exit, is the magic taking effect. The play has held up a mirror so accurate, so damning, that the viewer cannot help but see his own reflection and recoil. But here is the deeper layer, the one that implicates us. As we watch Hamlet watch the play, we are also watching a play. We are the outermost ring of this concentric circle of illusion. Shakespeare is showing us that our own world, with its betrayals and hidden crimes, might also be a kind of performance, and that we, like Claudius, might be unprepared for the moment the script holds a mirror up to our own hidden acts. The mirror becomes a metaphysical tool, revealing that all the world truly is a stage, and our actions are performances whose ultimate audience may be our own souls. From the grim trap of Elsinore, we travel to the enchanted Isle of the Tempest, and a very different kind of inner play. Prospero's mask is a celebratory performance for the young lovers, Ferdinand and Miranda. Goddesses descend, nymphs dance, and a vision of perfect, bountiful harmony is presented. This is art as divine blessing, a reflection of the cosmic order Prospero seeks to restore. The mask shows a world where spring eternally follows harvest, where Venus and Cupid bless a chaste union. It is a glimpse of the perfected reality, the philosopher's stone of social and spiritual harmony. Yet, even this beautiful vision is violently interrupted. Prospero startles, remembers the plot of the brutish Caliban, and with a snap, the revels are ended. The actors melt into air. This sudden dissolution is a masterstroke. It reminds Ferdinand and us that even the most glorious vision is temporary, an insubstantial pageant that will fade. Prospero's famous line that follows, "We are such stuff as dreams are made on," applies not just to the spirits, but to the mask, to the lovers, to himself, and by extension, to our own lives watching in the theatre. The beautiful illusion is broken to teach a lesson more beautiful than the illusion itself, the lesson of impermanence and the dreamlike nature of all reality. The cosmic drama is the only permanent play. For a more comedic, but no less profound, reflection, we have the pageant of the nine worthies in Love's Labours Lost. Here, a group of rustic characters attempts to perform a historical pageant for the sophisticated court. It is a disaster. The actors forget lines, mispronounce names, and are mercilessly heckled by the nobles they are trying to entertain. On the surface, it is pure farce, but esoterically, it is a brilliant satire on the gap between aspiration and embodiment. The worthies are great archetypal heroes, Hector, Alexander, Julius Caesar. The clowns trying to portray them are hopelessly inadequate. The comedy arises from the painful distance between the divine ideal and the flawed human attempting to channel it. Yet, in their sincere, bumbling effort, these commoners are, in a way, more authentic than the cynical nobles mocking them. They are earnestly trying to reflect a higher ideal, however poorly. The scene holds a mirror up to the audience's own pretensions, asking, how well do we perform the great roles of our own lives, the roles of lover, leader, or friend? Are we not also clumsy actors, often failing to live up to the archetypes we are meant to embody? In each of these meta-theatrical moments, Shakespeare pulls back the curtain. He shows us the machinery of the illusion to make us understand that illusion itself is the machinery of the world. The play within the play is a deliberate awakening device. It says you think you are just watching a story, but you are also in a story. You think these characters are merely acting, but so are you. The grand cosmic drama, the divine play of creation and destruction, of fate and free will, is the ultimate script, and our lives are individual performances within it. By breaking his own stage reality, Shakespeare points to the greater, unseen stage on which all of us, player and spectator alike, take our entrances and our exits. The final curtain fell, but the hidden play within the plays was only beginning its long, secret run. For centuries, a select audience of mystics, philosophers and initiates has kept Shakespeare's esoteric flame alive, recognizing in his work not just genius, but a coded grimoire. This perception of the bard as a secret master is not some modern internet theory. It is a continuous, documented thread woven through the very heart of the Western esoteric tradition itself. One of the earliest and most influential groups to claim him were the Freemasons. As their fraternity formalized in the 17th and 18th centuries, they found in Shakespeare a perfect reflection of their core values. The plays are saturated with Masonic themes, the sacred duty of kingship, the importance of rightful order, and above all, the symbolism of architecture. Think of the constant building metaphors, the talk of foundations being laid and towers being scaled. For Masons, building the Temple of Solomon was an allegory for building the perfected self. Shakespeare's frequent use of this language, from measuring out a life to the precise, almost ritualistic laying of plots, resonated deeply. They saw in the meticulous construction of a 5-act play a mirror of their own symbolic architecture. And many early lodges adopted scenes from the plays, especially The Tempest and Macbeth, as part of their moral instruction. The bard became, in effect, an honorary brother, his works a source of lodge wisdom. A very different but equally profound embrace came from the Theosophical Society in the late 19th century. Pioneers like Helena Blavatsky, who sought to synthesize all the world's spiritual traditions, saw in Shakespeare a universal sage. Blavatsky didn't just enjoy the plays, she quoted him as an authority in her seminal work, The Secret Doctrine, placing his insights alongside those of ancient Hindu sages and Platonic philosophers. For Theosophists, Shakespeare was a conscious initiate who had accessed the perennial philosophy, the one timeless truth underlying all religions. They believed his profound understanding of human nature, his cosmological visions in plays like A Midsummer Night's Dream, and his treatment of themes like reincarnation in the late romances, proved he was channeling an ageless, secret wisdom tradition. He was not merely a writer, but a seer who had dipped his pen in the ink of the Akashic records. Then in the 20th century, the lens shifted from the cosmic to the psychological, yet the esoteric interpretation remained. The pioneering psychiatrist, Carl Jung, who mapped the collective unconscious, found in Shakespeare's characters the most vivid illustrations of his archetypes. For Jung, Hamlet was not just a prince, but the embodiment of the pure eterness, the eternal boy struggling with the shadow of the father. Lady Macbeth became a terrifying study in the possessed anima, the feminine side of a man's psyche turned destructive. The fool was the trickster, the wise guide from the unconscious. Jung didn't necessarily believe Shakespeare was a conscious occultist, but he recognized that the playwright's genius tapped directly into the archetypal realm, the very source of myths, dreams, and symbols that form the bedrock of esoteric thought. The plays, in Jung's view, were spontaneous revelations of the psyche's deep structure, making them indispensable for understanding the soul's journey. This legacy is vibrantly alive today. Modern occult authors and researchers continue the work of decoding, armed with deeper historical knowledge and cross-cultural symbolic frameworks. Scholars like Gareth Knight and Joseph Pearce have written extensively on the Christian mystical and Platonic currents in the plays. Others explore the connections to Renaissance Hermeticism and alchemy with even greater precision, tracing specific imagery to known alchemical texts of the period. Online communities and independent researchers dissect the sonnets for numerical ciphers and acrostic codes, arguing for intentional hidden messages. Whether one agrees with every modern theory or not, the sheer volume and persistence of this work is telling. It proves that the sense of a hidden dimension in Shakespeare is not a fringe idea, but a perennial response from those who look for deeper patterns in the world. From the Masonic Lodge to the Theosophical Salon, from Jung's consulting room to the digital forums of today, a consistent thread emerges. Those who walk the hidden paths of spirit have always recognized a fellow traveler in William Shakespeare. They hear in his verse not just the music of the spheres, but the whispered passwords of initiation. This enduring fascination across 4 centuries is perhaps the most compelling evidence of all that the greatest writer in the English language was playing a much longer, and far more mysterious, game. We have walked the hidden paths of the plays, from Prospero's alchemical island to the fairy-tuned forests of the mind. The journey reveals a stunning possibility that William Shakespeare was not merely a playwright, but a master of a timeless wisdom tradition, using the public stage as his most ingenious and daring classroom. His works are not flat pages or simple plots. They are living, multidimensional texts. On one level, they are thrilling stories of love, power, and betrayal. On another, they are sharp political commentaries on the nature of authority and justice. And woven through them all, like a golden thread in a rich tapestry, is a profound spiritual curriculum. He taught not through lectures, but through lived experience, by making you feel the dissolution of a king in a storm, the ecstasy of a lover under a spell, or the chilling clarity of a ghost's command. He initiated his audience by letting them walk, for a few hours, in the shoes of an initiate. The stage was his temple, the actors his priests, and the shared silence of the crowd was the sacred space where transformation could whisper. So the next time you encounter Shakespeare, whether in a dusty book or a darkened theater, look with new eyes. See if you can spot the recurring symbols, the fool who speaks truth, the storm that purifies, the crown that tests the soul. Feel the sacred geometry in the architecture of the plot, the 5 acts mirroring the 5 stages of an inner journey. Listen past the words for the hidden music, the celestial harmony that the characters have forgotten but the play itself remembers. The greatest magic trick in history was not performed with a disappearing coin or a floating woman. It was performed with ink, paper, and the human voice. William Shakespeare hid the secrets of the universe, the maps of the soul, and the keys to transformation in plain sight, on a simple wooden stage, for the groundling and the noble alike. He trusted that someday, someone would look past the sword fights and the love sonnets, and see the luminous, eternal pattern underneath. What hidden meaning have you discovered in his work? Share your own esoteric insights in the comments below. And if this journey into the occult heart of the bard has sparked your curiosity, subscribe for more explorations into the hidden histories that